Here we're going to show you how to install the keypad repair kit in the old Panasonic cordless telephone. This one is a KX-TC1401, but this same keypad works in a lot of different old telephones, like the 1700, 1701, 1740, 1741, 1500, 1501, 1451. Basically, if you look at your keypad and it looks very similar to this is probably going to work. Pay attention, like down here, it could have a different number of buttons. The keypad will fix keypads that have all 8 buttons here, and some of them have fewer. There's usually always a button down here by itself, and then you've got the talk button with the 2 smaller buttons here. But I'll have a good description in the part listing for all the part numbers, so you might want to just double check that or ask me if you have any questions. Anyway, let's get to taking this apart. You're going to need a small flat screwdriver, small Phillips screwdriver, isopropyl alcohol on, I like 91%. 70% has more water in it, but you can get away with it. You might want Q-tips, toothbrush, cleaning rag, stuff like that. And basically, to get started, we'll just take the battery cover off and the battery out. It's a big battery pack with a wire, and there should be 2 screws down here at the bottom. And all the screws are the same in this one. I assume they're all going to be the same in the other models as well. Once you get those 2 screws, it's kind of loose in the back a little bit, and you can get in there and pry the backing part. We don't want to rip it apart, we just want to put some pressure. And then you can use the small flat screwdriver and just place it down in the gap and slide it up. It gets tight, and then it unsnaps that. And then you could probably switch it over and do the other side like that. At this point it's really loose. If it isn't, you could keep going and get the top clip. There's 2 on each side. There's a big one up on the edge, but this just comes right off. If it is stuck up there, you can, at this point, you can wiggle it a little bit and it'll come off. So there's only 1 screw left to hold the antenna in. We're going to take that out. And then the antenna just sort of plugs in. Pull that out. There's 1 wire that goes through the receiver speaker. Just pull that out and open it like this. I've already cleaned this phone out. These will often have a lot of oil and goo in there. If it's really nasty, or especially if there's dirt and stuff built up on the button side too, you can just take this right out and clean it in hot water and soapy hot water in the sink and dry it off real good. Put it back. The circuit board, you must clean all the oil, sticky oil stuff off with isopropyl alcohol. You can just don't get the microphone really wet and you'll be all set, but you could just dab some alcohol on there. Sometimes I kind of rub it around a little bit with something, or maybe a Q-tip, just kind of let it soak for a few seconds, a minute maybe, and then it'll clean up easier. And you can use a rag. If it's really nasty, you might want to use a toothbrush a little bit. But you want to get all that stuff off of there, because that's part of the problem. So once you get it all cleaned up, it's time to put the keypad on. Now this is a membrane keypad. We're adding it in. It's not replacing anything. This is made of multiple layers. And we need to peel off the brown paper liner. Normally I just pick at it with my fingernail on the corners until I find a place that's, if this one's giving me trouble, I might move over here and start this one on and grab it. Once you get it started, it comes off really easy. If you have sharp tweezers, you might be able to pick at a corner, or maybe a small X-Acto knife or a sharp knife. You could kind of carefully, without trying to cut yourself, pick at the paper until you just get it off, and then you could easily peel it off from there. Now some people have contacted me and they're having really hard time getting the paper off, and then their keypad didn't work, and that was because they were splitting the plastic they weren't peeling the paper off the plastic, they were splitting the plastic in half. So just know that once you start the paper, it just comes off really easy. If a little bit tears off, you might pick at that little piece that's left with a tweezers or your fingernail or whatever. Now we want this to install as flat as we can. We don't want to bend it or have a bubble or indent or anything like that. So you can you've got 4 holes here for some LEDs. All the phones might not have LEDs because it might not have light backlight. There's 2 holes here for some solder points that stick up pretty high. There's a little rounded area for the microphone, and some other holes cut out for some bumps. So what I like to do is kind of use that microphone dip there, and then I'm going to use these 2. There's a couple holes that go through the housing, so you can kind of use all that to line it up, and then just gently place it down. Now I don't want to poke on this, or it's not going to come off, so you don't have to be sure to stick it down really good, because we don't want to bend it, warp it, or indent it anywhere. You might just sort of touch it slightly on the edges, and then that's fine. It's going to stay in place for us to assemble, and once it's assembled, there's no way it's going to get out of there. So we're all set there. Now to put this back together, the only thing you have to worry about is this speaker wire. You don't want it over the buttons. You don't want it stuck in the housing or anything like that. So I'm just going to kind of tuck it in there. Flip this over. There's a plastic pin up here that goes through a hole, and it just sits there. And I'm going to place the antenna back in. It's got a metal clip thing that goes on the top and just sort of slides in place there. And I'll put that screw back in. Now once you've got it apart, I've seen a lot of these Panasonic phones. This is the charger contacts, and they touch these square pads. A lot of times these build up oxidation over time in dark spots or whatever. So you might want to clean that up. If you've got a small file, like emery board would work. Let me get one here. Fingernail emery board, you could just lightly go over the points that contact there. You could use some isopropyl and a Q-tip and try to clean those squares and the ends off a little bit, but that'd help a lot, especially if you're having any trouble charging. So now we just got to put the back of the phone back on. I start at the top with the big clip, and then just make sure it's all lined up. It should snap on fairly easily. If there's a wire in the way or whatever, you might have trouble, so keep an eye on that. Put the 2 screws back in. So with that membrane keypad, it's multiple layers. So now, instead of the rubber buttons contacting the circuit board, the rubber buttons push the membrane keypad down. The membrane keypad then contacts the buttons on the circuit board. And I've got a power supply to hook up instead of a battery, just to make it easy. And this phone does not work unless it's connected. The buttons don't do anything unless the base is powered up and turned on. So let me do that, hopefully. And all the buttons work great and fast, respond really easy. Better than new. And that's it. Thanks for watching.